I'm in the studio today. Like you, I'm still reeling over the impact of Charlie's martyrdom, the first martyr of the Third Great Awakening. He preached the gospel, not from a plexiglass pulpit, but from a chair with a tent on college campuses. What an amazing young man. Then he put it on media, had 100 million views every couple of days. Hit media, hit education, and then he changed government. And he was not even 32 years old. At times I can scarcely keep from weeping as I think about him and Erica. But at the same time, something's been unleashed. A shift is happening. The media can no longer get away with this moral equivalency. Well, they did this and you did that. It's getting blown up. And the truth's coming out. And then the depravity of the left and its real system, its real thinking is now being exposed and reevaluated. Jesus said that when a storm comes, you've got to make sure your house is on a rock. It's too late to build your worldview and your thinking in a storm. You really have to do your preemptive work. It's the same thing, by the way, with economics, which is why the way we pay for all of our work here is partner with the right people. Birch Gold has been a reliable right person to partner with. And when the storm comes, $32 trillion worth of debt, America in this state of flux, we're praying there'll be no civil war because the incivility is on the left, but we are in a spiritual war right now, and your money needs to be safe on a rock. That's why I'm telling you to go to lancewallnau.com/gold. Read the report. And if you have hesitated before about this, you could join, I don't know, I don't want to tell you this, but maybe I've sold $40 or $50 million worth of gold for these people because Americans, and especially Christians, want to have a rock-solid investment under them. And gold is only going up. As instability increases, it's only going to get worse, folks. You're going to see the financial markets also reflecting instability. Be smart. Go to lancewallnau.com/gold and find out why other people have been proactively building a rock under their finances. Let's get into today's show. We're going to be talking right now about some things that I think are of very big interest to my community anyway. One thing that we're going to just address is Kim Clement's prophecy about an Esther, and people are talking to me about Erica. I'm going to give some comments on that. But I want to start with an surprisingly interesting AI experience. There's a digital revival taking place right now. It's kind of, the New York Times is covering the article. They don't quite know what to call it, but it's nothing short of a miraculous digital revival where multiple millions, particularly of young people, who don't have a church necessarily they go to or a Christian chaplain or a friend that they trust entirely, and they go to, of course, the computer, they go to the AI, they go to their phone, they go to, ChatGPT or Grok or whatever. And what struck me as interesting is one AI program just put together a montage of Charlie Kirk statements in order to comfort a young lady who was distressed. I found it strangely encouraging because this is Charlie Kirk's thoughts, and AI is it's compiled it together, and I think you'll understand why I wanted to start this show with this. Let's go play that segment.
This young woman asked AI, what would Charlie say right now?
First, I want you to know I'm fine, not because my body is fine, but because my soul is secure in Christ. Death is not the end, it's a promotion. Don't waste 1 second mourning me. I knew the risks of standing up in this cultural moment, and I'd do it all over again. Second, do not let this violence divide us further. The enemy wants chaos, fear, and retaliation. Don't give it to them. Instead, double down on truth. Double down on courage. Double down on your faith and on your families. That is how you honor me. Third, remember this. America is worth it. Free speech is worth it. Fighting for the unborn, for families, for sanity in a culture gone mad, it is all worth it. So dry your tears, pick up your cross, and get back in the fight. Do it with joy, do it with strength, and never ever let evil think it won.
That's exactly what he'd say.
I knew Charlie. That's exactly what he would say. Maybe with a little bit more emotion, but he would say it. Now look, I am, when you go through a trauma of any sort, this would have happened had President Trump been assassinated at Butler or on a golf course. The first stage is like total disbelief, can't believe it. You just can't process it. Then there's this phase with death called the stages of grief, bargaining with God. Then there's the phase of or depression or anger, and the anger phase, and then there's finally acceptance. Many people are going through that at different stages right now. The most dangerous part of that for our movement is anger, because the enemy right now is on the ropes. There's a stripping away of pretense, of the veneer, of normalcy regarding the bizarreness and the destruction of the dark left. The anger, of course, is directed in different ways. And we have people in our group that right away go, and it's strange, anyone, watch this, just want to say this, any Christian or movement leader in MAGA who is a believer that believes that Israel is your enemy and that the Jewish people are somehow your enemy opens you up to a spirit of deception, especially that. There's something particularly pernicious and toxic. And what I've noticed is the voices that I most have enjoyed and rely on, when they start going off on Israel, and they bring it into Charlie Kirk's situation. So you've got some leaders that are trying to connect Bibi Netanyahu to the assassination. You understand how crazy that is? Crazy to you, but not to them, because they've already let their brain be open to that demon, that the Jews are the conspiracy behind everything. You say I'm crazy. I'm not. In various ways, if you've opened yourself up to that, like Candace Owens, for instance, then what comes out of you later on is a deceiving spirit that she's in agreement with, and it leads to conspiracy theories of different iterations. So, for instance, her latest one is that the great cover-up is that there's deep in the bowels of TPUSA, there was a trans, this is if you can believe this, they had a trans staff member, I don't think so, but that there was on a campus somewhere, several layers removed from Turning Point, with all their students involved. One student had an inappropriate relationship with a trans girl, and they were covering it up for fear that it would hurt TPUSA fundraising and try to protect Charlie. That kind of narrative going viral at a time like this is a combination of the bargaining stage, which is fantasy, looking for a conspiracy in the wrong direction, and then fixating its focus on the wrong target. Right now, the problem is not with the right. The problem isn't the right-wing cover-up like they're trying to do. And, of course, they're connecting it to Epstein, the Jew. And that Jew thing with Epstein opened them up to the anti-Israel, anti-Semitic spirit, and that spirit will lead you into a deceptive area. Not that this situation with Epstein isn't bad. It's that when it morphs into Jew targeting, Netanyahu, Mossad, all those stories, what it leads an open door, folks. It's kind of like my wife and I both dabble with the occult. She was in further than me. But it's, and like she would say, the problem is not how much you get into it. It's how much the occult gets into you. And you wouldn't question me if you're a charismatic or one of my tribe and say, no, you really need to do like in Ephesus where Paul had them renounce and repent and burn their Ouija boards, whatever they had back then is the equivalent of that, and their tarot cards and their incantation books and their witchcraft spell books. Well, that's the equivalent of the occult spirit can get into you through hatred ideology. I believe it's almost like an occult spirit that is in the cults on the left, and particularly in the trans community. That's why there's a lot of merger of witchcraft into the LGBTQ trans community. That's why you had your witches, who are all like the lesbian-aligned alliance against Trump, doing their incantations and spells. You don't remember this stuff. They actually had organized curses on Charlie for the event in Utah. But what really disturbs me is Charlie's words, and listen to them. Do not let this violence divide us further. It's almost like that's almost like a prophetic AI thing. Don't let what they've done create anger, bargaining, fantasy, unreal thinking on our side. Now's the time for cold, laser-like, steely resolve to hit the targets, the funding, the organization, and the infrastructure of the radical left, which is funded by the billionaire class, and they've got their, I'll show you the machine they've got in Washington, which has put $1.8 billion into feeding the radicals through certain shell games they play so that the money is a distance removed from the funders. These guys are lawyers. They're like the mafia. Well, they are. They're like the mafia for the devil. And what you've got is a moment right now where the veneer of the lie. See, we're in a sustained battle of public persuasion. That's what Charlie died for. He died bringing the ideas into discourse so that, go ahead, talk to me about it, whatever your thinking is about God, about gender, about sexuality, about marriage, about socialism or Marxism versus capitalism. We've got a movement that has grounded ideas, rich in history, and you can attack me because they're Judeo-Christian based, but my gosh, this is 2,000 years worth of wisdom literature, and nations can actually be built or fall based upon how they align with the non-optional moral universe God himself oversees. And he did such a brilliant job of debating it because he felt that the youth, which everyone was giving up on, could be won. And so he had a youth movement. And as I said in a viral little TikTok video, or a video that went out with like 2.5 million views this weekend, Charlie is the first fruits martyr of the Seven Mountain Movement. Why do I say that? Because he was a believer with a strong church commitment who went out of the church into the education mountain to go battle the ideologies of professors and win the youth. He went into the media mountain, and he had a domination of the media space with 100 million views every 3 days off of his shorts, and the shorts were based on his conversations with students, right? He dominated the political spectrum, government mountain, media mountain, education mountain. You seeing a pattern here? And he did it because the church mountain wasn't doing it, but he's a Christian representing Christ in those other areas so as to impact families in America. So you have the political mountain, the family mountain, the church mountain, mobilized to go out and reach the youth and the education mountain, and utilizing technology with social media in the media mountain, funded by donors in the business mountain. So you can make fun of me all you want. And we talk about this stuff because he and I were always kind of scratching our head on what the latest Christian nationalism slur is and getting our handles on that because we were being misrepresented. I did one event in Pennsylvania where, you know, if you're in my rallies sometimes, I go back to the scene in Gladiator where Maximus is in the arena and the chariots are coming towards him, and he tells all the 12 gladiators that are with him, hold, 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 as one. And they shout, as one, and they pulse the chariot because their shields were locked together in unity, and they were moving as one. And then to emphasize that, I had people put their hand up and bring it down as one. And we did that at a rally for a candidate in Pennsylvania who asked me to come in. And 2 million views went out on that, a picture of me, not the moment, because they couldn't take the recording without being proved a liar. And 2 million views with me going as one. They caught me at the moment my hand was up and said, Lance Wallnau, Christian nationalist, leads rally with Nazi salute. 2 million people saw that. If I had more visibility, if I was out in front agitating more, I'd be right there in the same kill box that people like Charlie are in, because this has to stop. And this is the moment we have right now, which we don't want to be distracted from by the Candace Owens and all the Jew haters and the Israel conspiracy theorists. We've got to go after the media and the politicians and the network news commentators and the preachers, weirdly enough, on the left, who are calling us Nazis and racists and fascists because that language is now being used to justify within the murder cult of the disoriented, trans, and bizarre Marx community. They think they're doing God a service by killing people like us. You got that? So now the battle's going to go to them regarding their rhetoric And when we come back in a minute, I'm going to explain to you how that battle is morphing with J.D. Vance throwing the gauntlet down as a future president for carrying the casket of another future president who was assassinated. That's Charlie Kirk. And he lays out where we're not going to be able to compromise. And he's absolutely right. We'll be right back. We're entering a period of time that has increased hostility against people of faith. It's a time when Christians are going to be tested on a moral, physical, psychological, and even a financial basis. I'm here to remind you that God is the one who has blessed you thus far, and He will take care of you in the future. You have a divine responsibility, however, to see trouble and prepare yourself. For example, with record inflation eating away at the value of the U.S. dollar, the savings in your retirement account is in danger of slipping away. I recommend diversifying your 401k or IRA out of paper assets and into physical gold. And the best way to do that is with a gold IRA from Birch Gold Group. Now that includes no penalties, there's no taxes when you transfer current retirement funds into Birch Gold. To see how it works, I want you to go to lancewallnau.com/Birch and get your free info kit, and you'll be glad that you did. Some of you might have seen Greg Gutfeld have his meltdown there on the 5, which is, I guess, our conservative version of The View, except we actually have token liberals up there. Not token, they represent liberal ideas. And one of them tried to bring out this idea, well, there's violence on both sides. He said, stop it. And he cusses a couple of times. That's not going to continue. We're not playing that game. We're not playing that game for likes, for views. There is no equivalency between the exhibition of Tesla burning, trans shooting, the shooting of the Catholic kids in church, and the daycare. There's a whole list I'll give you in another morbid segment of this broadcast of all of the incidents that have happened. They go, well, what about the Governor Shapiro? And he came out and said, we have to. Governor Shapiro had his house firebombed, not by a Christian, MAGA person, or a shofar-blowing Catholic. He had his house firebombed by a radical leftist pro-Palestinian. So don't lump him in with their violence on the both sides. So the first lie that the media came out with was, well, the killer came from a conservative family in Utah. Mormon, I don't even know how you're going to work that in there. It's not your. It's a different religious version in Utah, dominant, but it was a Mormon family. And I have no idea whether that you can call them like the super conservatives. I can show you a picture of mom and taking a picture of her kids celebrating, walking around with, with a dead Trump under him, dragging him around on Halloween. That's a weird. There you go. I mean, he's on the right there. That's Trump in green, and so. And the other kid looks like he's carrying a rifle like a hunter. So the parent, whatever the parents' version of conservative was. They weren't being raised in, we don't know what he was raised in, but we know he veered off from the conservative family's values. I'm not knocking that. Good, Mormon values. I like Stephen Covey. Okay, so good Christian values. Maybe not the best theology, but good values there. So the reality is the press right away went to he was a right-wing extremist that shot Charlie because Charlie wasn't sufficiently right-wing. And this lying that goes under the cover of freedom of speech at the New York Times or at the Atlantic or at Salon, at these various other magazines, or Rolling Stone, this rhetoric now needs to be exploded, pushed back on, and a grenade has to be dropped down on this literary propagandizing because it's going into the cul-de-sac of, frankly, low-thinking people you're feeding into the view they've already got that makes Donald Trump the fascist ruler so that it creates a valorizing of the killer. This is what happened with the CEO from the insurance company. The kid has like a whole fan club who shot him because there's a valor and a kind of prestige being attached to the courageous youth who are willing to take out the evil Nazi, white supremacist, Christian nationalist, fascists. That language now is no longer just hate speech. That language is incendiary hate speech, feeding the dark underbelly of 30% of the Democrat Party or the campus community that says that political violence can be justified in certain circumstances. The first lie about the killer's far right-wing alliance was exposed when we found out he had Antifa language encoded on the shells. He was literally here. There's this one slogan they have when they shoot is called, "Hey, catch this." That was inscribed on the book. That's a cute idea. Like here, playing catch this bullet. Boom. That was on the shell casing that took Charlie out. Antifa language. But Antifa has it's like an it's a nihilistic, paramilitary, underground organization mobilized in all of those cities that were burning during our riots and such. And they have a particular embedded existence within the trans queer community, which is different than the homosexual community, because homosexual is an orientation according to the people that are involved with it. But the queer and the trans community is an identity. And if you don't affirm their identity, then they see you as their enemy. And they've been able to operate without any kind of restraint whatsoever, to the extent that I'm shocked. University of Utah, sponsors a lecture by armed queers at the University of Utah. Student organization co-hosting the event, MECHA, stands for 11 principles, which includes the termination of oppressive capitalism, colonialism, racism, cis-heteropatriarchy, means a man and woman as a nuclear family, termination of land ownership, abolition of all police and prisons, intolerance of abuse, violence, and queer individuals in our organization and any form against any of our queer individuals and organization of our communities, armed militant protection of our communities. And so armed militant protection of our communities, which are out for the, go ahead and throw some of those images up there. There's your queer resistance advertising, cute girl with her killing machine in her hand and her finger on her trigger, which is unacceptable for anyone that practices even posing for a picture with a gun. You'd only put your finger on the trigger when you're ready to pull it. It's the stated goal of the LGBTQ plus militia to agitate individuals who disagree with them, to provoke them. There's a picture of the fellowship right there. This is your Antifa brand picture right there in terms of the age group, demographic that most is susceptible to this kind of indoctrination. And now we're having a discussion about healthy and unhealthy indoctrination because these kids are getting fed this narrative. Well, that was the first lie that came down was it was a MAGA right-wing extremist. Now we find out this guy was actually living in a romantic relationship with another man who is becoming a woman. So you got homosexual, transgender, packaging there. And then you've got his left-wing Antifa slogans. So, boom, there goes the narrative that Charlie was shot by a conservative right-wing fanatic. The second narrative is, and it's even more dangerous, is the slogan making the rounds on social media of the myth of balance. Liberals calling for even-handedness, since both sides are equally guilty. That mythology of balance is now being destroyed. On an uncelebrated bit of academic study, Rutgers University published a study titled Assassination Culture. Catch this. Assassination Culture, How Burning Teslas and Killing Billionaires Became a Meme Aesthetic for Political Violence. I'll give you one guess what they discovered in their research at Rutgers. The study was provoked by researchers concerned over widespread left-wing celebrations of two recent stories, the firebombing of Tesla dealerships to protest Elon Musk's relationship with Trump, and the political assassination of insurance executive Brian Thompson by Luigi Mangione, all over corporate greed. In other words, the left-wing internet was already celebrating political violence and encouraging escalation months before Charlie was killed. They weren't coming out against themselves. They weren't calling for police. They were actually making a hero out of the bold Tesla activists and Mangione. The survey revealed several troubling trends. 56%, over half of those who self-identified as left of center reported that if someone murdered Donald Trump, they would feel at least somewhat justified. Similar numbers supported murdering Elon Musk. Similar numbers, 56% for the burning down of Tesla dealerships. Unsurprisingly, the researchers found a statistically significant predictive correlation between assassination culture and blue sky usage, which is their own community for communication. It's kind of like, I guess, the left-wing preferred Reddit location. Scientists linked assassination culture with left-wing authoritarianism, which was defined as moral absolutism, which is we're absolutely right and this is ultimately right and this is wrong. And then punitive attitudes, punishing, harming, doxing. You know what doxing is? Doxing is when your address is called in as though there is a violent incident taking place. So the police go in there, theoretically, in order to deliver you, and they show up with weapons, but you're in a shooting situation right there. But the real purpose behind the doxing is to out the address so that one of their fanatics can go potentially kill someone. That's the reason why DeSantis had to hide the gal who had libs of TikTok. I think he had to provide her with protective custody because her life was threatened. Threatened like Charlie Kirk for just exposing what was going on the left. Now, I said earlier, we have to be careful not to stir anger, so I'm not trying in any way to stir your anger. I'm going to remind you what Charlie said. Do not let this violence divide us. What we have to do is have the resolve to go after the myth-making machine. And this is the second target right now, is this it's on both sides argument. Don't buy it. Don't listen to it. You'll hear selective information given by the people on the left in order to try to find something over here on the right. There is no correlation between the two. I'll tell you what. Go bring up Asset 10. I got 1 minute left here. Seth Gruber makes this list for us. Asset 10. Denver shooter, trans. Aberdeen shooter, trans. Nashville shooter, trans. Philadelphia shooter, trans. Colorado Springs shooter, non-binary. Iowa shooter, gender fluid. Minneapolis shooter, trans. Charlie Kirk shooter, trans partner. The trans ideology is demonic and creates deadly radicals. The legacy media knows this and it pours kerosene on the trans movement to create more radicals. They're partly to blame, as are the politicians like Tim Walz, who's putting tampons in the boys' bathrooms. We must treat the trans ideology as domestic terrorism and rout the entire ideology out of our country. I miss Charlie. Well, I don't know that we could do that, but I do know this. We could start to go after the funded organization and the funding sources that are feeding into this. And even then, your biggest enemy is going to be the campus itself, where the left-wing faculty outnumber conservatives 30-1. So your little children that are going to school are going into the propaganda mill. I did say I was going to get to Kim Clement's prophecy. I'm going to have to do that in the next segment. I will cover it. I'm going to record it right now, but because of time restrictions for media, I will have to do that. Don't miss tomorrow's broadcast. Going to kick it off with Kim Clement and Erica Kirk's speech. See you again then. Bye-bye.
Did you enjoy this latest episode? Please remember to share it with your friends, because the more knowledge you have, the better equipped you are to navigate the world